Okay, so welcome everyone to our webinar for point-based attendance. Matt and I are both employees at workforce.com. My name is Ray and I'm the product manager here. And Matt is one of our software developers who was essential in building out the point-based attendance. So for today's agenda, we'll go over a high-level overview of what is a point-based attendance, the pros and cons of using it, and then some traditional usage of the point-based attendance. Matt will then take over and go over slides of how it works in our system and then go into our platform to do an actual demo of it. Throughout the webinar, feel free to put any questions you have in chat. Matt and I will do our best in answering it. Otherwise, we'll answer all the questions at the end. So at a high level, a point-based attendance in and of itself for most companies is a policy to track attendance and to apply discipline to their employee base. This is traditionally used for many hourly employees since it relies on them being on time, and them clocking in and out is what is the determining factor as to how their attendance is tracked and whether they get assigned points. So on the right, we have some examples there of leaving early could equal to 1 point, leaving late by 15 minutes could equal 2, or an unexcused absence is 3. These items could add up and eventually it could lead to disciplinary action, such as a verbal warning, a written warning, and eventually termination. Depending on how the company operates, there may be multiple steps. The points could be in fractions, but as it goes on, it's really just to have a unified policy for all employees to follow. Or if it's a large corporation, many unions or subsets of employees may have different policies in place. So the pros and cons of a point-based attendance system, occurrence, or infraction system, a real big pro that has a lot of implications financially is the reduced absenteeism. This has a heavy cost if employees are late. Certain industries where an employee being late could equal to things not being produced, stores not being opened, etc. That employee productive value could equal to hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, depending on what industry you're in. Now, the direct con to this is most of the time flexibility. So employee, from our research, really values their own time and flexibility of being able to choose their own schedule. So it is up to the employer to make sure there's a clear balance of maintaining employees' schedule needs around their life while making sure the employee understands that they need to arrive on time and leave at the certain time for it to be a productive relationship. Going down again for pros is the employee engagement. Many times when an employee knows and is invested in their job and knowing that their attendance is going to directly affect their employment, there is seen a high increase in that employees are more actively engaging with their manager and their company overall, and they take their time more seriously in making sure they're on time for work and present overall. Now, the con to this is employee resent. This is most likely seen when a company tries to implement a point-based attendance system and didn't have it established prior. Employees can get used to the tradition that they have had already, and trying to apply it takes a lot of change management and making sure everyone's on the same page and making sure everyone's heard, and then presenting it in a way that mitigates the employee resent. That being said, things will still probably happen, but it's all about making sure the communication is there from both sides. And then the last pro, there's many more, but for these three, what we're concentrating on, 3 for pros and 3 for cons, is the objectivity and transparency. If there isn't a point-based system in place and you track it in a different way, or you just measure and by managers' subjectivity, they may have favoritism. A manager may be friends with a certain employee, or a certain employee has been there for a very long time and they consistently have come in late, leave early, what have you. And this provides a very transparent system that comes from the top down that applies to everyone, and the manager's there to enforce it. And if they don't enforce it, there's a very clear audit trail of what they're doing and why it wasn't working. But on the con would be the difficulty enforcing it. A HR person at a large company and a lot of directors may come up with this policy, or maybe work with unions to make sure that it's fair for all their employers. But the difficulty of enforcing it is that the managers at the bottom still have to make sure they're following the policy to a T. If not, there's going to be more work coming from the top as they review an individual employee. This person may have hit 10 points and there's no disciplinary action taken, et cetera. And then there's a much deeper implication at that point. And some real world usage, we most commonly see it in major companies like Amazon, Walmart, and both of those companies have been in the news for good or bad in the past for it. But the reality for them is that if they didn't have this in place, the amount of money that they would lose for employees taking advantage of being late, et cetera, is going to impact them significantly financially. Then traditionally, there are certain industries that have had this for a very, very long time. Some of the ones that we encountered during our research were retail, manufacturing, and healthcare. So we have some examples there, and Tesla actually implemented theirs roughly 4 years ago. Cleveland Clinic, a very large healthcare company or healthcare industry inside the US, and FedEx. It's a little bit off-brand there, but it's just something that shows the diversity of the points throughout every industry, and it's pretty agnostic to anything. Now, there are small companies that have the needs to implement this, and while doing our research, there were few and far between. But what we found that they had in common is that they needed high productivity per employee. So a manufacturer we could think of Toyota or any large car company, but the reality is that there are smaller manufacturers that may only employ 100 or 200 employees, or they are a staffing company that outsource high skill jobs. And those are industries that have a high need for employees to function at a very, very high level because they have clients or internal businesses that require them to do so. And them having employees that don't produce will equate to them losing much more money than having a point-based attendance system. Now, companies that we've also seen not be able to implement this are companies that have naturally high turnover. There are companies that are turnover year over year, 80 to 90% of their employees, and they just need a warm body doing the job at that point. These companies also very likely don't discriminate against employees who leave, whether they're fired or they work one job and they never show up again. A lot of these companies will gladly take them back no matter what, just because of the nature of their work. A common one would be manufacturing and construction. Large companies will still apply it, but the smaller ones typically, if they're siloed to a specific location and they can only pull employees from that set location, maybe an hour out, they'll always take people back no matter what. So it's very hard for them to implement a point-based attendance system. That being said, I'll turn it over to Matt. I'll stop sharing my screen and let him take over. Hey, Matt, you're muted.
Okay. Cool. Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This is my first webinar. It's as a developer, I don't get a lot of chances to speak client-facing and get to talk about things I built. So it's kind of exciting for me. This was a fun thing to build. It is a pretty big feature. The demo won't be too long. We made it simple as possible to use. We're going to go through the setup of how you would set up rules and rule sets, how points get allocated from those rule sets, and then how you as an admin or manager can review your employees' attendance. So first you need to make a rule set. This page will be found under settings/clock reports. This is a top half screenshot of what a rule set would look like and the configuration for it. On the left side, you would see your rule sets in gray. This one is called Ray Testing, and there's a button to add a new rule set. Rule sets need three things: a name, tags, and rules. If you're a user of workforce.com, you are probably familiar with the idea of tags. They get used for a lot of different things as they get applied to users, from which labor law to apply to which allocation or which allowances they get and whatnot, time off requests. It needs rules. Obviously, a rule set needs rules. In the bottom, you can apply tags and you can add a name right there. This is just screenshots for now, but I promise I'm going to go into the app and show you how to do it. Also, you can set up notification system, disciplinary notification system. If a manager wasn't notified, if they're busy, they might miss how many points someone's getting. And using this system can definitely prevent people from getting more and more points. An email will be sent when they reach a certain threshold, and you can set those thresholds. There's verbal warnings, written warnings, an intervention meeting, and termination. And we do not send these to your employees. We do not terminate anybody. These email notifications will go to the proper managers who oversee that employee, and they can do what they want with that information. We also configured it in a way that you have to go by our hierarchy. On the right side of the screen, you can see verbal warning, written warning, intervention meeting, and termination, where termination requires less points than an intervention meeting, and the product will raise an error there for you. You have to go on, like, as you see in the middle, 2, 4, 6, 8. Obviously, it doesn't have to be so nice or even numbers. We also allow decimals. I'm not sure all of the ways that people would use this in the real world yet, so we try to make it as flexible as possible. This is an example of an email that would get sent. If anyone's screen is making it challenging to read, I can read it. It says, rule set Emma test requires an intervention meeting for Aubrey Cook. This on Tuesday, November 1st, the employee accrued 1 point for a uniform infraction. This brings our total attendance points to 3, exceeding the 3-point threshold for an intervention meeting. The following managers have also been notified. So as you can see, we just provide the information in a very easy to digest way for the managers to make decisions from there. Another part of the setup is making rules for the rule set. So at this point, you will have named your rule set, given it tags, and now you need to provide rules. It's very simple. The inputs up top, we provide 3 different kinds of rules. Actually, on the left first, you see what rules need. They need a type, amount of points, amount of minutes, and an expiration day. And if you're making a manual rule, which is one of the 4 types, then you would also provide a name. On the time off type input above, your options are a late rule, a leave early rule, a no-show rule, in which case an employee just doesn't show up to work, or a manual rule, which in this email before, you could see that this was a uniform infraction. I've looked up different policies for like Chick-fil-A and other companies, and they have a bunch of rules that employees can get points for. So that's just one example. Here you can see that we've set up a point rules for 1 point for being late by 15 minutes, 2 points for 30 minutes, 1 point for leaving 15 minutes early. And you can design these however you want. If you've been in the system for a while, there's a likelihood that you already have a rule set defaulted set up for you that you can inspect, and it probably looks like this one. If there's no tags on the rule set, then that means none of your users have been accruing any points. And the expiration date is when points will essentially roll over or refresh or disappear from our system. We will, on the user side, we archive point records and rules and stuff to keep an audit, because when you're dealing with such sensitive topics and data such as disciplining employees for being late, it's good to have an audit trail and a version history. So I don't have a screenshot of it. I could show you in the demo, but we do have a version history on the bottom of this page to show any rule changes and what logged in user made those rule changes. And like I said, we keep a history of all the points even after they expire, because it's often good to be able to see a pattern in long-term attendance behavior as well. Next section will be about allocations and how do users get points. There's 3 ways as of right now. On Clockouts, we check for late leave or being late or having left early. We do a daily scan for no-shows because obviously if they're not there, then they're not clocking out. So we couldn't allocate points that way. We also do manual insertions for like a uniform violation. We obviously cannot automate whether someone followed every rule at work. So that would be on the manager side, and we'll go through each one. So on Clockouts, we check, like I said, for late and leave early rules. It'll be evaluated on, calculated on clock out, not on clock in. And a user can receive up to 2 violations or have broken 2 rules on a clock out. If they leave early and arrived late, then they could potentially receive 2 allocations of points. If you have a leave early by 10-minute rule and a leave early by 15-minute rule, obviously both wouldn't apply if they were 20 minutes late. They're only going to get the 15-minute rule. No-shows, we have a daily task of that runs at 12 UTC time. That is, I believe, the same as the time in London. So that will cover all of our users in every time zone for the day before. So if somebody didn't show up to work, it wouldn't show up till at least 12 o'clock UTC time the next day. And we have manual insertions, where on the employee profile page, we can, at the bottom of that screenshot, you could see there's a rule and then that you could choose to apply and what shift it would apply to, and it will appear immediately on their profile. So if I exit out of here real quick, I can demo this page now. Let me know if there's any technical issues with seeing this. Maybe we can make it bigger. Cool. So this is a rule set. We could add a new one if we wanted. And it appears right here, the default name of rule set 2. We call it webinar rule set. You can apply any tags you'd like. As of right now, oh, we got an error. Perfect. So in this rule set, you could see I've applied to every single tag. And on this rule set, if I apply any tag, then it's going to conflict and cause the user to belong to 2 rule sets. And as of now, we don't know how we want to handle that, so we just restrict it. A user can only belong to 1 rule set. And we suggest making new tags for a rule set instead of reusing different kind of labor law tags and stuff. I think you would have the best experience if you had tags that were specifically created for attendance-based rules or points. Here you can see the points notification settings. If we change that and try and update it, we should receive an error. Excellent. Update that. And these are all the rules. You can add, you can delete as you go. Let's delete 1 point. Uniform, you can make a new one. Here's your late, leave early, manual rules. How many points you'd like to give. Give a name, say webinar, late for webinar. 1 point, expires after 99 days. And it will go right in there. You don't see an option for making a no-show rule because we already have one, and obviously it would be pretty confusing to have different points for the same rule. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You can turn it on and off. We will not be using any of your, if you have a rule set up with tags and everything, but you turn the setting off, then it will cease to apply to any users until you turn it back on. And you can delete a rule set here. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go back in here. Cool. And how, lastly, we'll discuss how you can review points. We have a new report page set up with all of the users who are visible to the logged in admin or manager. So admin of the whole organization would see everybody. A manager of a specific location would only see the employees who report to them. And we have several columns with their total points, their late, leave early, unexcused, different manual rules. And it default sorts by who has the most total points, but you could change it by alphabetical order or filter by specific points as well. And if you click into any one of these rows, it will take you to the employee profile page. If you're familiar with the bar on the left, the timesheets, clock-ins, all of that, we added a new one for the attendance points per employee. And it's very similar to the other report, but just for one, and it has all the nice headers on top so you can see it quickly. And we added a toggle that you could see in blue on the right above the delete all button. So you can also filter to just their expired points, which in my case, for the rules I just set up, would have expired 99 days after the employee receives that allocated point. And we can click in real quick. I think, no, we go to reports, 10 points report. You can see Ray was late for 10 points, leave early 4 points. If you click in, it will take you to his profile page. And this is also where manual insertions happen. So assuming I haven't already given him one of these, we can give him 1 point for being late to the webinar, create, and now it's in here, right on here. So very easy to review, to quickly review, very easy to set up, and very easy to understand how points are being allocated. And that's all for my demo right now. We can open up to any questions.
Yep. So Cam has asked 2 questions that I've answered in chat.
Oh, awesome.
To review everyone's for everyone. As Matt mentioned later in his slide, there was a different tab for under user's profile called the attendance points as opposed to attendance. And API, there have been chats and talks internally about making this available through our API, but as of right now, we don't have a commitment as to making it just yet.
Are there any other questions or anything anyone would like to see demoed?
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in right now, but if anyone does have any additional questions, feel free to comment into the intercom chat that all of you have access to. Our support team, actually. Matt, do you want to take that question?
Sure. It scans timesheets. On the timesheets page, when you see individual shifts, those get generated by clocking in and clocking out. So if in our system, if we take all of the schedule objects and we compare them against all the shift objects in our system. And if there are published schedules that do not have a correlated shift, then we mark them as having not attended. So some people don't clock in and out. They don't use the clock in functionality. They generate shifts in other ways. So it's not just that. Awesome.
Okay. Last call for any questions. If you don't have any right now, feel free to go to the support chat. They've all been trained on this functionality and can provide additional help.
Can I leave my email?
If you want.
Yeah. If anybody, I mean, like I said, I don't talk to customers very often. I'm excited about this feature. So if you have any thoughts or any questions about how it's working. I don't do this often, but feel free to reach out to my email, and I'd love to talk about the point system more.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.